Welcome, learners. Welcome to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. Today, as part of Block 2 of Indian Society paper, let us try to discuss the various dimensions connected with Unit 4, where we are going to talk about Indological and textual perspectives and the thinkers like Manu, Dumont, Fourier, and we will also discuss about structural functional perspective as presented by M.N. Srinivas and S.C. Dubey. So, taking you further, like when we talk about perspective, perspective is the way we look at particular facts, right? How we understand a particular phenomena or behavior. When a group of scholars, when they come together, when they share their viewpoints, even like when you talk with your friends in group, probably you share a particular viewpoint, your friends might be sharing another kind of a viewpoint. So that is a perspective. How are we perceiving the things? So perspectives are an inherent part of understanding social reality, and even in the context of understanding Indian society, we have multiple perspectives offering diversified kind of explanations and understanding about Indian society. So prominent among them are Indological perspective or textual perspective, structural functional perspective, Marxist perspective, civilizational perspective, and also subaltern perspectives. Now let us begin our discussion on Indological perspective. What is Indology? What are the things which we discuss as part of Indology, which is very interesting part. So basically, when you are trying to talk about Indology, our focus is to understand and interpret the diversified ancient texts and linguistic studies of ancient Indian culture. Moreover, Indological approach also refers to the historical and comparative method based on Indian texts in the study of Indian society. So you are basically trying to understand the Indian text in a particular context. So Indological perspective or textual perspective, it also uses ancient history, epics, religious manuscripts, and you will be happy to know or you will be surprised to know that Indology is much older than sociology, especially in Indian context. If you see at global context, it is as old as sociology. But in Indian context, definitely Indology has a much earlier presence. And it is attributed to the works of Sir William Jones of Calcutta, who established Asiatic Society in 1784. Then one of the main tasks of the society was publishing journals, especially Indological interests in Sanskrit or comparative jurisprudence or comparative mythology, etc. It is the beginning of the Indology in India, which was followed, like basically the beginning, if you talk about Indology, it's again attributed to works of Sir William Jones of Calcutta. And we have also contributions by Max Wheeler, Alfred Lell, Henry Maine, etc. The use of Indological approach, if you see in Indian context, it is attributed to the works of Ketkar, B.N. Seal, Sarkar, G.S. Fourier, U.S. Dumont, Kapadia, P.N. Prabhu, Iravati Karve. Very beautiful, wonderful writings on this. Now, with specific reference to Manu, if we try to understand that what Manu wanted to communicate and what was his understanding of Indian society, then the Manu's presence in Indian context is as early as Rig Veda itself, where he is pronounced as Father Manu, in fact, ancestor of the entire human race. And in Satapatha Brahmana of around 900 BCE, Manu is evidently the father of mankind when he follows the advice of a fish and builds in a ship in which he alone among men survives the great flood. Manusmriti, also called as Manav Dharma Shastra, traditionally is the most authoritative of the books of Hindu code. Manusmriti also clearly prescribes certain guidelines of how to lead one's life, and it contains 12 chapters of stanzas which total about 2694, and it deals with multiple disciplines, multiple dimensions like cosmogony, sacraments, Upanayana, study of Vedas, hospitality, marriage, various rituals, dietary restrictions, etc. So it is very, very diversified dimensions connected with individual living, connected with social living. Manusmriti also states that one earns respect due to wealth, company, age, actions, and knowledge, which is in increasing order. So it is a very logical understanding which we can apply even in contemporary times. There is no mention of family, gotra, caste, lineage, and other non-factors to demand or earn respect. Manu himself announces in Manusmriti that Vedas alone form the foundation of dharma. Shudras have right to study Vedas and conduct Vedic rituals. Vedas very clearly provide the right to Shudras and women, in fact, the entire humanity, to study Vedas and conduct Vedic rituals like Yajna. Nowhere, in fact, if you see in the context of Upanayana also, Manu forbids Upanayana or sacred threads for Shudras, and he is very clearly talking about Rinas, Ashramas, and Purusharthas. In fact, in our earlier chapters also of block 1, we have discussed about ashrama system. We are talking about 4 ashramas: Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas ashrama. And we also discussed about 4 Purusharthas: Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. In fact, every individual is also born with 3 rinas or 3 obligations: Deva Rina, Pitri Rina, Rishi Rina, and these obligations have to be fulfilled. Manu tries to classify dharma on one's ethical obligations in terms of 2 very broad dimensions: Sadharana Dharma and Vishishta Dharma. Sadharana Dharma and Vishishta Dharma together form Manu's moral prescription for human life and social living. Vishishta Dharma depends on one's varna and stage in life, whereas when you talk about general duties, specific duties with reference to one's varna and ashrama, they go together. Manu also is enumerating dhairya, kshama, dhamma, chaurya bhava, saucha, indriya nigraha, dhi, vidya, satya, akrodha, in terms of what it means: steadfastness, forgiveness, application, non-appropriation, cleanliness, repression of senses, wisdom, veracity, and restraint from anger as the tenfold virtues for the twice born. Manu also uses word dharma to mean not only individual and social duties, but also to mean law and justice. Dharma, the justice, is higher than the king and the state. So in Manu's philosophy, we try to understand, we try to see that justice has been given the topmost priority. Manu understands, like if we read his writings, though he has not personally written them, but it has been carried out and it has been written over different time periods contributed by the listeners, contributed by people who understood Manu's philosophy, that there is importance of desire in the mechanism of action. He sees very empirically the significant action as having founded on desire. Desire for rewards is what prompts man to action. Action for Manu is mental, manasa, bodily, that is sharira, and speech in terms of vak. These actions, Manu says, invariably bring out good or evil consequences. So these are some of the important dimensions connected with Manu. Now let us also try to understand that when in Indological perspective, apart from Manu is very, very ancient philosopher and thinker for that matter. And then at later stages, a very, very prominent Indian sociologist, G.S. Burye, you might have definitely heard his name, Govind Sadashiv Burye, is one of the most towering figures you will find in Indian sociology. And here it is very pertinent to understand that his intellect and his academic work has contributed tremendously to Indian sociology for that matter. He has been claimed as father of Indian sociology, and he has also been engaged in building up almost single-handedly the entire first generation of Indian sociologists post-independent period. So I request all the scholars, all the learners to definitely read more extensively about G.S. Fourier if we have to understand the foundations of Indian sociology and how Indian sociology has shaped up over a period of uh, decades and how it is existing in the contemporary shape. And as you can see on your screen, the contemporary works of Fourier are Caste and Race in India, which is I suggest every student of sociology to read about caste and race in India. There are also culture and society, Indian sadhus, Bharatanatyam and its costume. It sounds a very interesting title. Family and kin in Indo-European culture, gods and men, anatomy of rural-urban community, and his writings are from 1932 to 1962, quite a long period of his academic contribution. Now, proceeding further, caste and race has been one of the most prominent contributions of G.S. Fourier, and which was published in England as part of History of Civilization series, edited in 1932 by C.K. Ogden. And Fourier is giving us three very interesting characteristics of caste. It includes segmental division of society, hierarchy, civil and religious disabilities and privileges, lack of unrestricted choice of occupation, restriction on food, drinks, and social intercourse, and endogamy. In fact, if you take the Indian context, endogamy has been one of the most prominent characteristics of caste, and the entire notion of purity and pollution is also connected with our social intercourse, connected with our food habits. It is also related with our occupations also. Fourier has tried to understand caste system from a very historical, comparative, and integrative perspective. He's also trying to link kinship through caste endogamy and also through gotra exogamy. For Fourier, if you see, there are three types of marriage restrictions in our society which shape the relationship between caste and kinship. So, marriage restrictions also have been elaborately studied by Fourier. And one very interesting part of Fourier's writings is he has tried to present huge data on thoughts, practices, habits of the tribes inhabiting central Indian region. See, that has been the might of Indian sociologists who have written extensively about rural India, but of tribal India, G.S. Fourier being one of them. And he quotes extensively from various writings and reports to show that Katauris, Buyas, Orans, Huns, Goans, Porkus, they have substantially adopted Hinduism as their religion. There has been fierce debate between G.S. Fourier and Elvin, which scholars should definitely read, especially if you want to understand that what was the Fourier's policy with regard to tribes and what has been Elvin's approach with regard to tribes. Then Elvin, in his book Loss of Nerve, what he says that tribals should be allowed to live in isolation, whereas Fourier is arguing that tribals should be assimilated into caste. So both very interesting approaches, both have its respective advantages, disadvantages, limitations. And then Fourier also has written on grand theme of integration of tribals in 1943, and it was essentially in reply to the isolationist approach as presented by Verrier Elvin. Fourier also tried to view that only solution to this problem, whether tribes should be isolated or whether tribes should be integrated. This is definitely a kind of a policy-based discussion, contradiction. So Fourier is saying that the only solution to this would be a kind of a progressive assimilation with the farmers, peasants of the adjoining districts. He delineates the foundations of culture. He's beautifully presenting religious consciousness, our conscience, justice, then free pursuit of knowledge and free expression as well as toleration. These sound so such a music to ears when we listen to such contributions of Indian sociologists. And definitely, though these writings date back to 1960s, 1970s, lot of its essence is even relevant today. And I think as students of sociology, it is our moral responsibility as well as academic responsibility to take this work further. Then Gurye also has remained occupied throughout his life with the idea of urbanization, right? Where we are combining rural with urbanization, and a beautiful term comes out, urbanization, securing the advantages of urban life along with nature's greenery. So all those of you who are living in cities, in and once upon a time there used to be a lot of craze with regard to huge landscapes, huge skyscrapers, not landscape. I'm sorry, huge skyscrapers, tall buildings. But today, if you are living in a big city or metropolitan city or cities like Hyderabad, definitely our eyes crave for that kind of a greenery. So probably Ghurye would have thought that people living in urban areas will crave for this. That is why he's talking about urbanization with a lot of contextual natural greenery, and only then that urbanization can be balanced. According to Guri, an urban planner definitely must tackle the problems connected with sufficient supply of drinking water. This is one of the most critical components of sustainable development goals as well. And how to address human congestion, traffic congestion. You see, any cities, you are stuck up in traffic for hours together. So, this Korea thought decades back, what we are seeing today, this was also given a vision, it was given a thought by Korea. Then, how are we going to regulate public vehicles, insufficiency of railway transport in cities like Mumbai, erosion of trees, which is leading to drastic climate emergency in today's time? How are we going to address challenges of sound pollution, indiscriminate tree felling, and plight of the pedestrians? Gure thinks that religion is that center of the total cultural heritage of man. Gure also made original contribution to the study of Indian religious beliefs and practices. And as you can see on your screens, wonderful books like Indian Sadhus, Gods and Men, Religious Consciousness, Indian Accumulation, Vedic India, and the Legacy of Ramayana. All this work, they are beautiful reflections connected with Gurye's interest in sociology of religion as well. So, friends, I hope I am making myself clear and I am in accordance to your pace of understanding, right? And now we move on to another contribution by Louis Dumont, who is another Indological perspective presenter. So far we have discussed about Manu and we also spoke about G.S. Courier, right? These both are Indological thinkers who have written extensively, who have tried to understand Indian society extensively from Indological perspective. Now, when you talk about Louis Dumont, what is he trying to say? He's a French sociologist and he has presented a kind of ethnographic approach, ethnographic details. According to Dumont, when we see in his popular works Homo Hierarchicus, the caste system and its implications, he has tried to present caste as a token of the cultural unity and distinctiveness of India. So see, multiple people have multiple perceptions about caste system. He thinks that it's a cultural unity and it is a very distinct feature of Indian society. Human says that Indian sociology or sociology of India must lie at the confluence of sociology and Indology. It means what? It has to bring together sociology and Indology. Only then you are in a position to understand Indian society in its completeness. Then Dumont's Homo hierarchicus means analyzing caste hierarchy and hegemony. Hegemony means dominance or power, a hegemony nature of lower caste to which they follow the habits of higher caste. The same concept was also termed as Sanskritization by M.H. Srinivas. So we will see a lot of overlap of concepts between various thinkers, and that is what helps us to join the lines and join the dots of conceptual alignment between different thinkers. Homo hierarchicus gives new ideas and vision of social structure in the caste system. And further, Dumont is also presenting three characteristics of caste system. What is it trying to say? There should be separation among different castes in terms of marriage and contact, not even sharing of. So there should be separation among different castes in terms of marriage and contact. So how, see, when we said that caste is an endogamous group. So when you are trying to explain caste, marriage becomes one very important factor because intercaste marriages met with lot of resistance. And here I would also suggest my learner friends to definitely give a reading of Baba Saheb Ambedkar, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's writing on annihilation of caste. And in one of the references is also talking that how intercaste marriages can play a very important role in annihilating the evils of caste system in India. So I request our learners to find time to definitely read that. Then Dumont is also talking about division of labor. People can only depart certain professions and limitations were set. So strict occupational restrictions were very important characteristic or important feature of caste system. A range of status which arranges different groups differently. Some are superior and some are inferior in nature. So caste, as you know, is a hierarchical system, right? And in this hierarchical system, there are definitely very strong notions of superordination and subordination. That is why from this entire concept of superordination and subordination comes the concept of upper caste and lower caste. Then, of course, there are strong notions of pure, impure. Purity and pollution have been defining features of caste system. What was considered as pure, what was considered as polluted, these were definitely connected with our food habits and our occupations. For example, a person who is working in a funeral ground, he was considered to be belonging to a polluted occupation. And that is why, from this notion itself, in the evolution of caste system, when we read, from this kind of notion only, the evil practice of untouchability has taken birth. And though originally with what intention this concept was started, purity and pollution is definitely uh, worth understanding. So concepts of pure, impure is inherent aspect of caste system. Varna is also a kind of a concept which helps us to understand this entire framework of caste system according to Lewis Stewart. Then, so far we have been talking about Homo hierarchicus. Now, there is another interesting work or concept called as Homo equalis, published in 1977. This is also one of the very prominent works presented by Dumont, and who goes back to West to understand and observe Western society's values and ideologies. So you see, Indian values, ideologies to a great extent for a very long time, for decades and centuries, have been shaped by caste system. But in Western societies, it is not the caste. There are other components of stratification system like class and estate. In fact, entire European society, if you see, there is a strong presence of estate system as stratification. In his book, he talks about two societies, first being holistic societies, where the key ideas are social hierarchy and social conformity. Secondly, individualistic societies where the key ideas are equality among individuals, but this society is less to be seen. In fact, a completely egalitarian society is a utopian idea. It is an idea, something which is beautiful theoretically, but practically we all have experienced our own levels of inequalities in some way or the other. So, friends, I hope so far I have been clear. And wherever you are finding it difficult, I request you to pause the video, do some introspection on what I have said and what you are seeing on the screen, and make note of if you have any relevant doubts which can be clarified. Definitely, because at some point of time or the other, we'll definitely be meeting, right? So far in Indological perspective, we have discussed about Manu, we have discussed about G.S. Fourier and Louis Dumont. Now let us move to structural functional perspective. Should we? I'm sure you all are saying yes, right? So coming to our M.N. structural functional perspective. See, in your fundamentals of sociology paper, first semester paper, you would have definitely understood, right, what is structural functionalism or what is structural functional perspective. Here, my entire discussion is in connection with Indian society, right? So structural functional perspective is basically what is the structure of a particular society in terms of what are the different parts in the society and what is the function of each part, right? For example, family. So, what is the function of the family? What is the function of kinship? What is the function of education? What is the function of religion? Right? So, I would also request you before you dive deep into structural function perspective in Indian context, also have a this broad understanding to revise and recall what exactly are these perspectives. So now coming back to M.N. Srinivas, who is known for his structural functional perspective to explain Indian society. What is it saying? Let us try to understand that. So, Mysore Narsimhachari Srinivas, M.N. Srinivas, a very popular name, very familiar name to Indian sociologists. He was internationally renowned. You must read his writings, his about his life story, and he was a student of G.S. Fourier at Department of Sociology, Bombay University. He's definitely first generation sociologist. And Srinivas' studies of caste and religion highlighted not only their structural functional aspects, but also the dynamics of caste in rural settings. I think you all will definitely agree with me that caste reflects differently in urban India and it completely reflects very differently in rural India, right? So he tried to understand that how caste varies in rural and urban settings. And he has given very, very beautiful concepts, very, very relevant concepts like dominant caste, Sanskritization, Westernization, secularization, to understand the realities of intercaste relations and also to explain how their dynamics operate. The concept of dominant caste has been used in study of power relations at village level and is also presenting number of studies on structure and change in village society. Srinivas has written articles in 1940s on Tamil and Telugu folks. So just take the pride in reading Indian sociologists because they have been so multifaceted, right? Apart from sociological research, they were also writing folk songs because that is also the way of understanding Indian society, right? Now, proceeding further, friends, then his writings were interdisciplinary. Naturally, those who can write folk songs and those who can do research on rural setting, those who can give concepts like dominant caste, definitely they are interdisciplinary in nature. And he has given the concepts connected with Brahminization, Sanskritization, Westernization, and secularization, and religion and society, study of village, caste, dominant caste, and one of his landmark works his Region and Society Among Kurks of South India, published in 1952. In fact, M.N. Srinivas and Kurks, research on Kurks, they go hand in hand. So Srinivas considers village as a microcosm of Indian society and civilization. And right from Gandhi ji to our Rigvedas to later thinkers also, they all have emphasized the beauty of villages and the soul of India lying in villages. And a similar sentiment was expressed by M.N. Srinivas also. And he was greatly mentored. M.N. Srinivas was mentored by Radcliffe Brown. And when he settled in India after his return from Oxford, he conducted the study of Rampur, a Mysore village, which gave him the concept of dominant caste. So it's all very, very interesting for that matter. And he's also, M.N. Srinivas also has contributed tremendously with regard to caste system, and he has also tried to give the various characteristics in terms of endogamy, common occupation, how various rituals vary across the caste, then how they share a common culture. He's also talking about notions like hierarchy, occupational differentiation, restrictions on commensality, like food habits, there was restrictions, dressing patterns, speech and customs, pollution, caste panchayats and assemblies. These are the things which has been highlighted by M.N. Srinivas. In structural functional perspective, apart from M.N. Srinivas, we also have S.C. Dubey. So he's renowned for his work on Indian villages and for his documentation and analysis of process of social change. He was deeply concerned. See, S.C. Dubey was very much concerned about status of social sciences in India. In contemporary times, even in 2026, this concern remains to be the same. That how are we going to further strengthen and bring greater progress in terms of research and application in social sciences. And he was strongly supporting the use of social sciences for public policy formulation. And he was also trying to promote and strengthen diagnostic and analytical techniques to understand the social problems. Only if you understand in a diagnostic way various social problems, you are in a position to provide public policies connected with it. Dubey has always advocated for interdisciplinary orientation and promoter of research interest. He always looked at things in a very different perspective, reflecting multi-dimensional personality. Dubey proposed a more comprehensive frame of reference for study of complex cultures. India is definitely a land of diversity. It is a land of cultural diversity, and that is why it becomes very important for us to understand the complex culture as well. And then his major contributions includes themes of tribal society, village study, modernization, development, and his entire work has been on Shamirpet village close to Hyderabad. And he's also trying to study different types of religious services and festivals observed in the village of Shamirpet. They are family ceremonies, village familial and communal festivals, and the Muslims and Hindus interaction with each other during festivals. Very beautiful, diversified concept. So, my dear friends, let us quickly summarize. So, what have we discussed so far? I'm taking you again to the first slide where we started. So, in this particular unit, we have tried to understand about Indological, textual perspective and structural functional perspective. Indological perspective tries to present a textual understanding of Indian society through ancient texts of India, and prominent thinkers whom we have discussed in this unit are Manu, Louis Dumont, and G.S. Fourier. We have also discussed about structural functional perspective, where we are trying to see Indian society in terms of its structural organization, and the prominent thinkers which we have discussed is M.N. Srinivas and S.C. Dubey. So I hope you were comfortable with this lesson. I encourage you all to go beyond and do further more readings on this. And you can always connect with me through Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. I'm Dr. Vinita Pandey from Department of Sociology, Veeranari Chakali Ailama Women's University, Koti, Hyderabad. So happy learning to all of you, and explore more and more about Indian society, because today Indian society is in its very, very dynamic phase. And I will meet you very soon with Unit-5 on another kind of a perspective to understand Indian society. So till then, happy learning, happy reading, happy learning, happy exploring. Thank you all. Bye bye. Take care.